all chat all day, but we've got other speakers to get through. So 11:30, coming up to Paulina Howfield will be our next. So I'll ask you to present us, so I'll ask you to please take your seats. Thank you all. Thank you very much. We've got a fun-packed but a very full weekend. So we've got a lot to get through. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to introduce our next speaker, who's Paulina Howfield. Paulina, I mean, there's so many with Paulina with her depth of experience. I mean, it's so difficult to be able to summarise all the things that she's done and all of her experience into just a few short sentences. So I'll say a few short words. So a sound healer, an art therapist, a global shaman. With what Paulina does when she goes to certain sacred sites around the world is she's very empathic and she tunes in and she actually reads the star alignment, the ET sort of connections with each of those sacred sites, and then she somehow puts them together. So she's a lovely soul, and I'd like to leave you with Paulina Howfield.
Thanks, Dan. And thank you all for coming along to share this experience with our star families. It's a weekend and often we're off playing sport or spending time with our genetic 3D families. And this weekend we get to be all together in star consciousness. And I think it's going to be a really good weekend. What do you think?
Yes.
Yeah, woo! Off to a really good start, isn't it, with the Strongs. I'm going to be talking about developing our galactic consciousness and how to do that through connecting with the soul of the Earth. And I've been doing that most of this lifetime and other lifetimes as well. And it began for me many lifetimes ago, as I've just said, but in this lifetime I kind of had a sense of other realms and other beings, and I had visitations and I had experiences as a child, and I felt very connected to the other side, so to speak, the invisible realms, let's call them, and that feels a little bit better. Is it too quiet if it's down there? And so I had a near-death experience, and for me I think that near-death experience was a deliberate event to trigger things that I had placed in my soul so that I would come to do the work with consciousness instead of from an unconscious place. And after that time, my work with the soul of the Earth became a definite consciousness aspect, and I want to share some of that with you, my experiences with my friends from the cosmos, who help me to do what I do, also teach me how to do what I do, and encourage me to take these steps of initiation that they need for me to learn more. Some of what I'm going to share, I don't share often, and I think it's appropriate that I start to share more of it now, and I hope you're going to enjoy it. So, let's start. 3D perspective, the thing that we spend most of our time in, is very dependent on what we think we need, what we want, and where we are. So if we're on a boat and we need land, that island looks pretty great. If, however, we're on land and we need a boat, the opposite is true. And so 3D life is very much about roof over the head, money to survive, family, friends around us, and living from that place of, in a way, sleepfulness. So how do we get from there to galactic consciousness? Well, I'm going to use this example to show some of the different dimensions that exist. And I'm saying just some of the different dimensions that exist. And I think there's actually more than 9 dimensions. I think there's many more than 9 dimensions. So please, as I'm showing you this, just know that I don't think there's only 9 dimensions, but it's to give you a bit of an idea. So in the core of the Earth is the crystal. It's called the first dimension, and it's how to master and manifesting and grounding. So part of our journey to become galactic conscious beings is understanding that there are many dimensions and each one of them has a different influence on us. And as we master each dimension, we then find it's easier to access galactic consciousness. It's actually easier to be more grounded, and it's easier to experience a joyous, peaceful life on this planet. So, iron core. In the second dimension of Earth are the telluric energies. Now that's where all the chemicals, minerals and bacteria are. And that's also how we understand how to master physical health in our bodies. And throughout history, in the indigenous cultures around the world, they will tell stories of places they don't visit. They will tell stories of places they do visit, but those that they don't visit will often have energies that they know it's not for people to interact with. And as we came along as Westerners, we decided that we were going to take all of these energies from the Earth. And some places that really we perhaps shouldn't be walking on, we're now walking on. We are mining, we are doing a lot of things. And so if we understand this level of the 2D and what's actually there, we can start to realise just how much damage we can be doing to this planet just by raping and pillaging. And also not just to the planet but ourselves, because we're releasing chemicals, minerals and bacteria that shouldn't be released. Okay, so 3D, that's where most of us live. Linear space and time, which we share with all biological creatures. And to access and fully master 3D, it's about mastering our interconnectedness. Don't really need to say much more about that, I don't think. We're all living in 3D, we get it. And 4D and 5D, and I went too fast, so I'm going to go back. I think I'm going to go back. Try again. Okay. 4D is the realm of our human collective mind and feelings. And many people that I meet on the journey of waking up and becoming galactic conscious beings are saying we don't need to worry about 4D, we're going straight to 5D. 5D is the place where we're all going to hang out because it's all about love. You'll see in this dimensional aspect that there's actually a lot more than just 5D. But if we don't understand 4D, and I'm going to try and use my left hand because I am left-handed, that might help more. We need to master our emotions. We need to take care of these. And we need to understand the archetypal energies and the balance of the masculine and feminine. And these are really important, and they often get ignored in the desire to become 5D or higher dimensional. But if you look at the ancient traditions anywhere, they talk about mastering this, the thoughts. Meditation is a way that we do that. Mastering our emotions, meditation is a way that we do that. And healing and understanding archetypal energies, how they're influencing us. because we're currently pretty much at the mercy of these energies, of the archetypal energies, which we don't understand. And of course, balancing the male and female. Now I'm getting confused which hand does what. Okay. 5D, which is what a lot of people want to aspire for, is the realm of love, expressing the energy of the universe. Just one universe, but universes. And master unconditional heart love. Now I've put a P there because in my experience in interactions with the Pleiadians, that's what the Pleiadians are helping us with. So part of their domain is this realm. How can they help us humans who have forgotten to be living in the realm of love and expressing that energy throughout the universe? 6D. This is where sacred geometry becomes really important. It holds form in place, and it's in a way connected to our blueprinting of plants, animals, humans and material objects, and it kind of holds us in space. And it's the master alignment in form. And while you may not agree with what I've put here as the different dimensional things, I think it's really helpful for us to understand that there are many different dimensions at play. All of them have aspects that we can learn from and understand at a greater detail what's actually really going on. 7D, that's the realm of cosmic sound. Galaxy's communication system and mastering communication with all sentient beings. Now, the AN there is for Andromedan. So those energies are helping at this time for us to understand this. And if you think so far with what's happening in the world, as there's this journey to become aware of fifth dimension and live in fifth dimension, all of these things are starting to become more and more important in the collective. It's because everything's important. And if you work with this, you can work with these others. If you work with this, you can work with these others. So they're all interconnected and all interrelated. 8D, the realm of the divine mind at an organizational level. And the beings that are in charge of that are the people from Orion, or the beings from Orion. So it's really about raising our master vibration to that of the divine. And then 9D, the Milky Way, the void, where we master time and form. My ET friends tell me that our species, human species, even if we're hybrids or starseeds, are really one of the few, if the only, species in the galaxies that has actually created a time framework for something that doesn't really exist. So our 3D aspect has become so sure that it's all about linear space and time. We have forgotten that it's not about time and space as we think we know it. So these are the 9 dimensions, and we're moving towards a place of potentially being able to master or at least access all of these. Now, we access all of these all the time. So the journey is about doing it consciously, knowing the different dimensions that we're in, knowing what we're doing. So, what is galactic consciousness? Well, it refers to galaxies. We're in a Milky Way galaxy. And some of this writing is actually helping me to remember stuff. Not to remember stuff, but where I need to go next, because I often talk off the top of my head. So a galaxy is continuously creating and transforming itself, just like we are. And frankly, this is the great mystery that we need to remember, that we are constantly creating and transforming ourselves, and we've forgotten. And that every living thing, as I've said, is connected. We're all a microcosm of everything else. And so if something happens in the planets, we're affected by that. That's why if the moon is doing something, we're affected by the moon. If something's happened on Earth, we're definitely affected by that. If we're doing something, the Earth is affected as a result. So it's about really understanding how interconnected we really are, and that nothing happens in isolation. And this news is not new news. It's been known by the ancient cultures all over the world for millennia. And even in Western culture, the philosophers throughout history have known about this connection. And John Donne, who was a poet in the UK in the 17th century, he wrote, "No man is an island. Everything is interconnected." Now, of course, with recent laws that have gone on around the world, we now been saying no man, woman, transgender, is an island. But whatever we are, wherever we come from, we're not alone here. And I think that's really important to remember, and that's what galactic consciousness helps us with, is sometimes as human beings we feel alone. We feel separate. We feel we don't belong in our family of birth. We sometimes feel we don't really have friends, and we feel disconnected. And galactic consciousness and understanding that and living every day with galactic consciousness helps us move through that. Did the wrong thing again. So there's nothing and no thing that happens to us that does not happen to us or in the universes, the multiverses. Which begins to get us thinking about how we behave, what our thoughts are, what our consciousness is, because we are co-creating this consciousness in every moment, and how we behave and how we interact is reflected back at us in every moment. But what does this mean for daily life? It's all very well to be galactically conscious, but what does it mean? Well, the quality of our experience begins to resonate with a frequency, but only a frequency that we're attuned to. So, depending on the frequency we can hold or we can understand, we will begin to get information and understanding accordingly. And of course, we have to start where we resonate and develop from there. Because if you start at a level that you cannot resonate with, then it's really, really hard for it to make sense. It's really, really hard to bring it down and make understanding in our emotional, mental and physical bodies. And acquiring galactic cosmic perception, it requires us to be fully human and to take account of and bring into balance all facets of our being. And in the work that I've been doing for a long time in this life, it's been about helping people to understand that we have subtle bodies that impact us in every moment. Our thoughts, our emotions, our auric field, our subtle body energy patterns, and they all have an impact. And the more we can understand our thoughts, the more we can understand our emotions, the more we can understand what runs us, because we all have programs that run us, the more we can understand that what we hold on to and what we let go of, and deciding what makes us fully human. And as we develop our galactic consciousness, we actually become more and more human, because we don't look to get away or look to run away, because we know it's okay here. And I mentioned this before, time has a different meaning when we're in galactic consciousness. Any of you here have 11, 11, 12, 12, 13, 13, 14, 14 tells you where our clocks are going. We're all now into digital age. But so the 11, 11, the 12, 12, all of those are really aspects of helping us to understand these time codes, because they're frequencies and keys that help us tune into galactic consciousness. I remember being at a workshop about 10 years ago, and a young woman said, I'm a mathematician, and I'm a bookkeeper, and I work with numbers and figures all the time. And I know them inside and out, and I know that 1 + 1 = 2, and that 1 + 2 = 3. But she said, I woke up yesterday, and I realised that 1 + 1 = 11. And so when it's 11 + 11, it's like it's something really profound, and I don't understand what it means yet, but it's changed my whole belief and understanding about numbers. So these numbers, this information is helping us to understand that time has a different meaning, which again, throughout the world, other cultures have known for a long, long time. So how do we access galactic consciousness? Well, for years, centuries, millennia, we've been standing on planet Earth or laying on planet Earth or doing whatever, and we've been looking up. And if we're on Earth, we see the Milky Way. And we've been wondering, sometimes in awe, sometimes in grief for what we've lost, that we're not there anymore. But generally just this amazing, amazing thing that we get to look at. And then, while we know it's happened elsewhere at different times, in the public arena in the 1960s, the quest was to fly to the moon. And we must transport ourselves out into that galaxy which we keep seeing. So we've decided that the way to go there is through vehicles. But of course, many of us have been having contact with beings from other places for a long, long time. And they can teach us a lot. So, they can teach us, if we haven't forgotten, or if we haven't found it through science, that the truth about our galactic heritage was placed in our DNA, RNA, and in our blood. And about 20 years ago, I used to spend 3 months a year in Sedona, in Arizona. And I'd run workshops, and I interacted with the amazing energies in Sedona. And there was a man who channeled a being called Whoosh, which, interesting name, Whoosh, I'm here. And he used to talk then about the different bloods that we have and how they are indicators of where we come from. Now, our scientific world doesn't talk about that yet, and maybe never will. But we have our galactic heritage, not only in our DNA, RNA, but also in our blood. The knowledge of our galactic beginnings and galactic memory is also placed in our energy fields and subtle bodies, and this is why it's important that we keep our energy fields clear and keep cleansing, because this is where our heritage helps to trigger us to grow and change. The truth is also veiled in the mythical and archetypal stories that are told all over the world. Every culture has archetypal and mythical stories, and I'm going to talk about some of them later. And the truth about our beginnings and multidimensional birthright is imprinted into the earth. So if we connect with the soul of the earth, we begin to see and feel something really different about this amazing base that we live on and interact with. And I like to just look at the earth, because actually when I had the near-death experience, I left the body and went out into the stars, which is why I know we really do come from the stars. And I got to see the planet in the distance, looking gorgeous. I got to see a few other planets in the distance as well. But it's kind of just beautiful. And then the thing that most people forget, though, is that she's a living being. She's a living being. She's not just a rock that's revolving around a sun, like Julian Lennon sang about a long time ago. She is a living being. And if we consider that from now on as we have this discussion, you start to see how this gorgeous living being that we're all really fortunate to live on has a lot of information to share with us. She's our wisest, oldest teacher. And every grain of sand, every droplet of water, every molecule of her body has something she can share with us. And she's unconditional. She has no agenda to stop us from learning. She has no agenda that requires us to be living in damage. She's on the journey to become a star, and we're lucky to be on her body while that happens, because she's not getting rid of any of us. And we're going into galactic consciousness with her. So, I like this picture because for me, it shows the subtle bodies of the earth, even though it's probably done on a computer. So Earth consciousness, and there she is, and she has a soul, a mythic body, and an etheric energy template. And when you interact with the soul, that's what you begin to fully recognize and learn how to interact with her, and also you begin to see how many different beings from all over the cosmos have visited our planet, left their imprints and their energetic stamps. Sometimes just because something unexpected happened and maybe their craft crashed and they were left on Earth and they needed to do something. Most of the time, though, it's they deliberately left imprints. And Earth is like us. We are mirrors to each other, connection and consciousness-wise, but also physicality. We have subtle bodies. We have emotional bodies. She has all of these things. And we are meant to have a reciprocal, symbiotic relationship with her, so that we can grow and change and become more awakened and more spiritually evolved. So there's the Earth. She's gorgeous, mythological and archetypal energies. That's the Phoenix, because we're on a journey to raise our awareness into the energy of the reborn Phoenix. All over the planet there are places that are infused with galactic consciousness and ancient geomantic mythologies and archetypes. They've engaged us for millennia. There's all sorts of stories. We have some of which I'll talk about. They're part of our genetic lineage and cosmic memory. So they feed us and fuel us without us realizing it. And part of our journey with the soul of the Earth is to understand just what's feeding us, just how it's prompting us to behave, and then how we can clear it if we need to, or align with it, or understand it more. And so this is why interacting with the soul of the Earth can help us to remember, reconnect and recall. So this has been an important part of my journey, is the helping people remember, reconnect and recall. And in the last 25 years or so that I've been doing some of this work and also working with individuals, this process of remembering has been deep. And we've gone through shadow energies to lift into the light. We've gone through people beginning that process of remembering, cleansing and healing. And then from there we take a deep journey into reconnection, remembering what we've lost, remembering how we disconnected. And the recall comes from the point where we become aware that we are souls and we can totally recall that journey, that separation from consciousness that made us feel disconnected, and returning back to deep, profound connection and oneness. Okay, so templates we can connect to. And all over the planet, as I said, beings have visited us for millennia, and human beings and other species as well have interacted with them. And so all over the world there are these templates, and some of them are just an individual template where some people have visited and left energy frequencies, but often you'll come across a cluster of geomythic energy templates. So I'm going to show a few examples of those in a minute. So like I said, they have rich templates, some areas, okay, we've done that. So templates around the world. So one of the places is, anybody recognise that? That's Avebury. And Avebury is in the UK, and it's in Wiltshire in England. It's very near Stonehenge. It's near West Kennet Barrow. It's where the crop circles first began. And all of this area is connected to energy patterns from the stars. And Avebury is almost like one of the navel energies of the planet. If you look into any of the ancient cultures, they talk about navels of the planet. And it doesn't mean that there are lots of navels to the planet. It means that at different times they've acted in that role, and they have an umbilica that leads up into the stars. There are also places like Stonehenge, which is like an airport or a teleport scenario. So often these stone circles are seen as one thing, but they actually mean something else. So Wiltshire, England is a cluster. Sedona, I mentioned earlier, is a cluster. That image there is Bell Rock. At the top of this rock here, actually from about there up, every year, people in the summer months, and also in the winter, but often in the summer, the fire brigade are called out because people have climbed, and there's a medicine wheel about here below it, and there's another one here, so you sort of walk this pathway up. Over here there's an area where craft come through, and there's another rock formation there. And people climb up and just sort of go for a bit of a wander and a trek, and then they get to a place here. There have been actually some people who've disappeared off the top, but they can't get down. And one year when I was there, and like I said, I went there regularly, and part of my pleasure in being there was that in the 3 months I got to just be in galactic energies and experience ancient fields. And I went up to Bell Rock on this particular day, and I'd been up to Bell Rock before, and I'd heard the stories about they have to get the firemen out to come and get people off with a ladder because they get somewhere and they can't get back. And I was thinking, well, gosh, I don't think that'll happen to me, and I hope it doesn't happen to me. Anyway, I walked up and I was aware that weird things happen on the rock.